Quest of the Warrior Maiden by Linda C. McCabe. Chapter 6. Shocked by the outburst, Ruggiero examined Mandricardo's armor. He bore an ancient bronze cuirass and matching shield with the design of a silver screaming eagle on a blue background. The major difference between their shields was that Mandricardo was made of metallic inlay, and Ruggiero's wooden shield was covered with hand-painted leather. "Sir," said Ruggiero as he scrambled to his feet, grabbing his shield, "this standard was borne by my father, and his father before him. It belonged to our noble ancestor, Hector of Troy. Pray, tell me, do you also claim him as your forebear?" "No, and I care not of your claim of ancestry," Mandricardo growled. "I bear the very armor worn by Hector. I won it by force. No one else shall bear this standard." "Where and under what circumstances did you come upon the armor of my ancestor?" said Ruggiero, his face burning. "Anatolia. It had been held there for centuries by magic. Hundreds of warriors and kings had been ensnared over the years in that enchanted realm. None were deemed worthy until I came." Mandricardo cast a sideways glance at Gradasso. "With my victory, all the failed knights still alive were freed. This eagle is mine now. Either renounce it or pay with your life." Ruggiero drew his sword and held his shield, then stared in amazement as he realized Mandricardo was unarmed. "How could I fight you when you have no weapon?" "That has never stopped me," said Mandricardo. "I shall fight you with a rock, a club, my bare hands, or with a weapon that I shall steal from you. I swore an oath to the sorceress who awarded me this armor that I would not bind a sword to my side until I secure Durindana and reunite Hector's sword with his armor." "What is that?" said Gradasso as he scrambled to his feet. "You are in a quest for Durindana? Stand in line, knave. I have had my sights on that blade longer than you. I have risked my life and my fortune for Durindana and for Bayard. I shall not allow you or anyone else to wield my sword." "I have beaten you once," said Mandricardo. "You wish to lose again? Fine, only this time we fight to the death." Mandricardo snapped a limb from a nearby tree and began stripping it of leaves and smaller branches. Gradasso hacked at another tree with his scimitar, making his own wooden weapon. Soon both men bore crude lances and charged their horses at one another. Ruggiero stayed clear of the duel, shaking his head at the spectacle. He could not understand why two men would fight to the death over a sword that neither one possessed. He was grateful that Gradasso had released him so quickly the previous night over the unknown whereabouts of the Lee's sword. Mandricardo and Gradasso's jousting splintered their makeshift lances. The warriors then swung the jagged wooden shafts as crude swords. Their anger increased as their poles decreased in size. Ruggiero wondered how long it would take them to strip the hilltop of trees, and if they would start resorting to using their bare hands against one another. The two kings had been fighting for a good portion of the morning when Ruggiero noticed through the thinning fog a knight progressing up the slope toward them. He hoped it might be Bradamante, but as the rider came closer, it was the strange standard of a dwarf named Brunello, the governor of Tingitana. Brunello's shield bore a golden goose with its wings and tail extended, over an egg upon a field of red. Gradasso was preparing for another charge at Mandricato when Brunello rode around the bend. His horse spooked and toppled Brunello backwards. One of Brunello's feet became entangled in the reins, and he dangled off the side of the horse. His helmet scraped the ground as his hands frantically groped the air. Mandricato laughed at the small, upside-down man. Gradasso aimed his weapon at his rival's head, but his blow was deflected by Mandricato's shield. "Thought I was distracted, eh?" said Mandricato. "Will you stop this senseless duel?" bellowed Ruggiero. "Help me save this man's life." Ruggiero ignored the look of contempt the two monarchs gave him. He had shamed them, and he knew they did not like being chastised by anyone, let alone a mere knight. Nonetheless, the two rulers dismounted and secured their steeds before joining Ruggiero in an attempt to calm the horse and free Brunello. Once the diminutive man was placed safely on the ground, he wept. Thank you, my lords, for coming to my aid," the man said, bowing at their feet. "I am Brunello, governor of Tingitana, and now your humble servant." Brunello raised his head, and a look of recognition came over his face. "King Gradasso, it is my honor to serve you, and Con Mandricato, may you live up to the noble reputation of your late father." They nodded at him. "Ruggiero," Brunello said as he struggled to his stand, "a mere accomant sent me to find you. He was displeased by your absence last night from the celebration in the royal tent." "I went searching for Atala rather than join Danafort in the looting of Toulouse. I became lost when the fog rolled in." Gradasso frowned. "I thought he was a minor knight of no real importance. Tell me why the Emir would allow such a man in the royal tent, and why his absence warranted a search for him." Brunello stammered. "Accramont favors Ruggiero." "Why? Is he a bedmate?" asked Mandricato. "No," said Ruggiero, as anger rose inside him. Brunello fidgeted with the golden ring. His skills are praiseworthy." Gradasso and Mandricato fixed their eyes upon Ruggiero, who felt his cheeks begin to burn for the second time that morning. "I have been the Emir's favorite ever since being named tournament champion," said Ruggiero. "That was the day he knighted me." Mandricato gave a crooked smile as he looked Ruggiero over from head to toe. "Tournament champion," repeated Gradasso, appearing satisfied with that answer. Brunello cleared his throat. "This morning, we discovered a massacre of at least 24 of our bravest men last night, including Danafort. They were sent to patrol the area to make sure Charlemagne's forces did not double back on us under cover of darkness. It is feared this treachery may have been the work of Orlando or Renaud." Gradasso and Mandricato perked up at the news, their eyes filled with anticipation. Ruggiero, meanwhile, felt guilty about his role in the carnage. Bradamante had been right when she said he should not fight with his fellow soldiers. Killing them was worse, but they had left him no choice when they attacked her. "Was Atala at the celebration last night?" asked Ruggiero. "No." Ruggiero swallowed hard. "Was his body found on the battlefield?" Brunello shook his head. "No. We searched for you, and would have noticed if he was among the dead. I would not worry about him. Most likely Atala left during the battle to gather magical reinforcements when it looked like the Franks were winning. Come, he said, as he gestured to the valley floor. You can see our forces have already begun their move toward Bordeaux and Aquitaine. The fog had lifted, and they could see thousands of people amassing in a slow-moving convoy. From this vantage point, they looked like tiny ants moving about the plains east of Toulouse. Dozens of men turned up the reddish-brown soil for graves. Some of the corpses had already been washed and placed in white shrouds. By the end of the day, the ground would appear blanketed with white petals, when in reality, it would be covered with dead soldiers awaiting burial. If we start now, said Brunello, it will not take us long to reach them. He turned to Mandricardo and Gradasso. The Emir will be honored to have such renowned monarchs join his campaign. Mandricardo and Gradasso nodded and mounted their horses. Ruggiero took one step toward Frontino when he stopped. Salat! We have not performed our morning prayer. He kneeled on the ground and said, Bismillah, announcing his intention to begin wudu, a ceremony to cleanse and purify before prayer. Having grown up in a desert area, he was accustomed to not having adequate water to use for this ritual, and instead used the dust from the ground to rub his hands clean. Ruggiero was penitent because his prayer life had been altered dramatically by the war. No longer was he able to leisurely pray 5 times a day, feeling the connection with the divine in a peaceful setting. Instead, there had been many times of late that the Muslim army had resorted to using the prayer of fear, where they did not have to bow their heads nor face Mecca. This was done to avoid being in a vulnerable position while facing their enemies. Ruggiero felt shame because he realized he had neglected to perform the previous day's evening and night prayers. He noticed Mandricardo and Gradasso exchange a glance with each other before they reluctantly knelt. Ruggiero sensed they were only praying because he shamed them into it. He suppressed a smile, having gotten the true measure of those kings. His suspicions were reinforced as they awkwardly performed wudu, as if they were unfamiliar with the requirements of the ceremony and were interested only in giving an outward impression of following the requirements of the Muslim faith. The 4 men turned in the direction of Mecca and audibly chanted their prayers. Ruggiero's voice was strong and clear, leading the foursome. Soon after he joined Akramont's army, Atala pointed out to him the telltale signs of fake piety: men mumbling or speaking their prayers overly loud. Both of those examples were displayed by Ruggiero's 3 companions. Faith to them was something like fine clothes that they donned for the sake of appearances, but did nothing to change the man inside. After audibly reciting his required prayers or rakat, Ruggiero kept his head bowed and silently added, Allah, I beseech you to look after your daughter Bradamante. See that she is cared for and is safe. I also ask that you care for Atala as well. Amen. If you enjoyed this presentation, I invite you to discover my novels, Quest of the Warrior Maiden and Fate of the Saracen Knight. They are available in both ebook and trade paperback. Signed copies are available from the wonderful independent bookstore Kazoo Books in Kalamazoo, Michigan. You can find them online at kazoobooks.com. You can also visit my website at www.lindacmccabe.com or at questofthewarriormaiden.com and join my mailing list. The music is Ruggiero by Gaspar Sans and played by Giacomo Fiore.